Genshin's pretty well known for blurring the lines between lore and gameplay mechanics. Even the purchasable currencies like Genesis crystals have lore attached to them. Why, I have no idea. But the more that I've looked into each instance of the lore bleeding into gameplay mechanics or like system limitations, the more I started to notice one very particular and peculiar pattern that led me to draw one extremely bizarre hypothesis. So let me ask you this. What if I told you that this guy, and this guy, and this girl, and this guy, and this, 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 are all the same person? And what if I told you that all of this is only made possible because of our itty-bitty pixie pal, Paimon? Well, buckle your seatbelts and get ready for the crackiest of crazy theories. Fourth wall shall be broken, mind shall be blown, I hope. And, yes, this is your reminder that this is a theory video. It's for entertainment purposes only and should therefore not be taken as factual unless through some bizarre twist of fate, miHoYo decides to actually make this true. And if that happens, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll probably at least end up making a face that looks like a gaping fish. And, well, blah, 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 do your own research, have fun, get messy, make mistakes, and, enjoy the ride on this cuckoo train. Anyway, let me give you a little backstory and context for this little theory of mine. At the very beginning of the game, the traveler fishes up Paimon from somewhere in the ocean or a lake or some body of water, and the two become friends. They travel around for a couple of months while the traveler reads a lot of books and learns how to speak the local language thanks to Paimon. And then the game finally begins with the traveler relaying their story to Paimon about their encounter with the sustainer of heavenly principles, also known as the unknown god. In this story that the traveler tells Paimon, the traveler draws themselves and their siblings not as people, but as stars. Now, I never thought that deeply about this little sand doodle because it didn't seem all that important at the time. I just wanted to start playing the game. But in hindsight, you have to admit that it's weird that the traveler didn't draw little stick figures of themselves and their siblings instead. I think it's easy to write this little doodle off as the traveler just drawing themselves as how they looked while they, appear while traveling through the sky as pictured here, but why do they look like stars when they're traveling at all? And not just one star, but two separate stars. You'd think that if they were like in a spaceship or something that you would normally travel in, which it doesn't seem like they have, but maybe they do, who knows, it would be like one spaceship and not two different ones. But even if that's not the case and they're just flying around with their little wings that we haven't seen since the start of the game, how would they even know what they look like from an outside perspective if they only look like that while traveling from world to world, unless they're staring at each other, in which case they're going to be too close to be able to see that like light refraction that makes the weird glimmery cross-like shape thing. Unless they actually are stars. Okay, yeah, I know what you're thinking. This sounds crazy. They're not stars, they're not rocks, they're not giant balls of igneous gases. They're obviously people, they're human, they're flesh and blood, they can eat and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, don't get ahead of yourself, because as crazy as this sounds, there's a weird amount of evidence to support the idea that the twins are actually not human, but stars. Literal stars. The bit that actually got me thinking about this idea seriously, or as seriously as you can think about a conspiracy theory, was actually one of the Electro Archon's voice lines.
Do you wish to know the truth about the shooting stars at night? They are but fleeting moments of luminosity. You used to be one of them? Oh, are you a Tengu warrior?
This is a really weird thing for the traveler to say, unless they are actually a star. Again, I know this sounds crazy, but humor me for a moment, because in the context of the world of Teyvat, a lot of the stellar phenomenon aren't anything like what we're used to here on Earth. For example, in Tevat, stars are not giant balls of gas millions of light years away. They're rocks, as shown in the version 1.1 Unreconciled Stars event. I have an entire video detailing this concept that I'll leave a link to here, so if you haven't seen it or you missed the event, please go check out that video before continuing because the next bits might not make a whole lot of sense otherwise. But the important thing about the rock stars concept is that they contain memories of the person whose constellation they belong to. This is important because every character in the game, including the Traveler, is assigned a unique constellation which can unlock more of their true potential. This is normally done through items acquired through wishing, known as the Stella Fortuna. But the Traveler doesn't use Stella Fortuna. They use memories. More specifically, memories of Immovable Crystal, Roving Gales, and of version 2.0, Violet Flash, for each of their respective elemental forms. And without an element assigned, the Traveler's basic attacks are just called past memories, and there are no elemental skills or anything else. And think about it. If the stars in the sky are actually rocks containing the memories of a person they belong to, then we, the Traveler, could be a physical manifestation of a star that's trying to recover its memories. This is what I mean when I say the twins aren't human at all. Which I suppose should go without saying since I just suggested they were stars, but what I mean is I don't think they have actual flesh and bones bodies. I think the twins' bodies are just like an energetic projection of a star's memories. Kind of like a holographic form, if you will, a shape-shifting form that allows them to blend in with whatever civilization they happen to encounter on whatever world they happen to be on. This idea brings me right back to the claim I made at the very beginning of the video, that all of the playable characters in your party are not really with you. They're actually just the Traveler, shape-shifting. Okay, the idea goes something like this. At any given time, the Traveler can only equip 4 different memories or shapes. Then, during combat, they can quickly swap between each form. Obviously, the Traveler's base form is also equipable and not necessarily a default unless you're, well, outside of combat and have to talk to somebody as the Traveler. Anyway, forms are determined by a process called wishing. By calling upon the memories of other stars, the Traveler is able to acquire star fragments known as Stella Fortuna, which allows them to access the memories of specific characters that they have encountered. The more Stella Fortuna they acquire, the better their access to that character's memory data. And immediately I know what you're all thinking, but wait, what about voice lines? Well, those are also memories. Think of it as like a copy of a person sitting within the Stella Fortuna that the Traveler can talk to and augment with items for ascension to make the memory stronger. It's the same concept as, leveling up your artifacts. You're making the memory stronger. The Stella Fortuna responds the same way the actual character would. It's not them, it's just their data. Kind of like a simulated AI, right? It's like when we face someone like Ajdaha every week, if you bring Zhongli's shape with you, his line will change to reference this. But remember, this battle, too, is only a memory. The repeat of Ajdaha is something like a simulation, and Ajdaha responds to Zhongli's form, not his actual presence. This can also help explain why, during some story quests, characters will join you in a 5th slot. Which I guess is kind of a technicality because if you already have like Yoimiya in your party when a story quest forces you to have her join, you won't get her added to the 5th slot, but this is where I'm going to arbitrarily draw that gameplay mechanics line and ignore the paradox completely. Anyway, I've talked before in my theory on elemental energy, link below, about how the Traveler seems to be able to purify almost anything. But What if the traveler isn't purifying so much as they're restoring lost memories, or using the memory of the object in question to return it to how it once was in the past based on its hidden memories, or repressed memories, or corrupted memories, however you want to think about it. But what if I then told you that all of this craziness was made possible not by the traveler, but by Paimon? No, I'm not changing the subject. Paimon is actually important here. See, Paimon has confused me since the beginning of the game. She's based off of a demon in Ars Goetia that apparently has knowledge of all arts, secret things, as well as past and future events. Paimon in the Ars Goetia also has the power of flight, remaining underwater indefinitely, and the ability to make all kinds of things and all sorts of people and armor appear at his summoner's request. Which is basically what our Paimon does. She tells us all sorts of things about everything in Teyvat, but appears to be somewhat amnesiac, or at least a little out of touch with some more current events. And we fished her out of a lake or an ocean that she had been in for God knows how long, and she's always flying, and as for the ability to make all kinds of things appear, well, Paimon loves treasure, as you might know, and you can buy stuff from her in Paimon's bargains. So where does she keep all of the stuff in her bargain bin anyway? This appears to be a power unique to her. Control over some kind of infinite storage pocket dimension or something. Weirder still, Paimon requires the exchange of star dust and star glitter for these treasures of hers, and you can only get star dust and star glitter through wishing, which is just us calling down the stars themselves. So effectively, Paimon is somewhat powered by star fragments, or stars in general. It also means that Paimon might be the one handling our freakishly large inventory inside of her little subspace thing, the Paimon pouch. So going off this idea that Paimon gets her abilities and powers from the stars, it's easy to believe that it's her ability that allows you to wish on the stars in the first place. After all, the shop and the wish menu items unlock at exactly the same time during the quest The Outlander Who Caught the Wind. This implies that the Traveler is a star that then wishes for assistance from other stars to gain new powers and weapons using Paimon's special abilities. After all, she can make all kinds of things and people and armor appear at the request of the one who asks her. It would also explain why the Abyss Twin appears to have different powers from the Traveler. They do not have a Paimon. For all her star-related powers and suspicious origins, and the fact that she's traveling with what I think is a star in a human shape, I have decided to give Paimon the nickname the Starkeeper. And yeah, that's a play on the Dainsleif title, Bowkeeper, since it's assumed he's called that because he's the keeper of the world tree in some way, but I also think that's exactly what Paimon is, one of the keepers of the stars. I think she might actually be a god whose job it was to take care of the stars in the sky to ensure that they don't fall. Only, she then fell herself into a lake, where she was later fished up by a lost star. And part of me wonders if Paimon knows this, or if she was underwater for so long that her memory got all jumbled up as a result. Paimon does say she's a god on a few occasions, most notably in a conversation between herself and the Traveler. She outright says Paimon is the god of protection. But what if she's not the god of protection, but what if she's the god of protecting the stars, and therefore other people who rely on the stars for their fate and destiny and everything else? Maybe without Paimon, the state of the stars goes into, state of chaos. In a way, this would make Paimon one of the most powerful gods in Teyvat, with the power to weave fate by adjusting the stars. In fact, it's worth mentioning that the Traveler's in-game profile text reads, "The Keeper is fading away. The Creator has not yet come, but the world shall burn no more, for you shall ascend." Are we ascending because we're a star that needs to go back in the sky? And what if the Keeper is Paimon? What if she fell to the earth and is now subject to erosion where her memory is fading away? What if she's one of 3 gods that maintains the stars in the sky? Maybe there's one that creates new stars, and there's another that arranges them into constellations, and a third that archives them when those constellations are no longer valid or needed. What if that's part of the original heavenly principles, the ones from long before Celestia and the Archon War? And what if the Abyss Twins' war with the heavenly principles is a fight for their freedom? Wishing to be no longer controlled by the threads of fate, but to be free to roam the skies as they please, to tear down the firmament that's trapped them for so long and travel the galaxy. Of course, this implies that the twins have never actually been outside of the world of Teyvat, only that they've seen many civilizations rise and fall within it, each time thinking that they've discovered a new world when it's really just the same one remixed in a different time period. In fact, it's possible that the twins might even be the morning and the evening stars in the sky. It even makes sense with respect to Paimon's existence because the morning star, which is the same star as the evening star, by the way, so you could argue that that's like the twin aspect, but anyway. The morning star has always been associated with Lucifer, and the demon Paimon from the Ars Goetia is the most loyal to Lucifer. And since Lucifer's name means literally light bringer, and Ether and Lumine are named after the sky and light itself, they could quite literally be the twin form of Lucifer. In fact, Ether is the space in which light travels, so you could associate Lumine as being the light itself traveling through space, so that's bringing light. Anyway, the twins as a result might even be the 4-pointed Primogem star symbol that we see littered everywhere throughout the game, right? And I honestly don't know what to make of all that, because an evening star appears at twilight, and Dainsleif is the twilight sword, which in Norse mythology was a blade that could never be sheathed until it killed its target, and wouldn't that make Dainsleif the sword of Lucifer? Like the twilight blade of the morning star? Which means that Dainsleif may in fact be trying to rescue one of the other star keepers, one of the other Paimons. Yeah, okay, it's a stretch, I know, but it'd be really cool if it were true. And even if it's not, I still think there's something to this idea. Even if it's not a literal star, maybe just a metaphorical one, I still think this idea of Paimon the Starkeeper has a lot of merit and definitely warrants some further investigation. But anyway, what do you guys think of all this? Do you think Paimon is the Starkeeper? Or do you think there should be a clear distinction between gameplay mechanics and lore? Just hit me with your best thoughts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, fire away!